Near the end of a long strategy session with a large health and wellness brand, a senior executive asked a very simple question. Are we winning? On paper, that answer was yes. They had great financial results, their targets were being exceeded, and big bonuses were given all around. But underneath the surface was a very different story. Innovation was slowing down, product deadlines kept getting delayed, and collaboration was broken. Employees were burnt out. That story, from a recent Harvard Business Review article, perfectly captures what I see happening in many companies today. Leaders are chasing short-term wins without realizing that they're trading away long-term success. And sometimes they don't realize it until it's too late. It's a clear sign that the quote, "What got us here won't get us there," was coming to life, at least for them and for others that are in a similar position. Reading that article, I can almost immediately picture what was happening and what led them down this direction. Leadership was probably pushing hard for results. Employees were delivering under pressure, but at the cost of their health, creativity, and long-term performance. Innovation does not thrive under fear. And when you optimize for now, you build a future on shortcuts. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Steve Jobs pushed people hard, and they delivered amazing products under his leadership. But Apple computers, under Steve Jobs' leadership, had a culture that was built for that. The people they hired were meant to deliver with that type of motivation and with that type of pressure. And anyone who didn't was quickly let go. So most companies aren't built the way that Apple was built and don't have the culture of Apple computers back in that period. So pretending that you have that is only going to accelerate the breakdown of your business. So in this video, we're going to go deeper. I'm going to break down 4 traps of spreadsheet strategy, and I'll show you 7 elements that actually build a business with resilience, innovation, and real strategic fit. Let's get into it. A winning strategy that is sustainable for more than a few years is more than just maximizing profit and minimizing costs. It requires a more comprehensive approach to strategy, which includes setting up a culture that yields the results that you want, the incentives needed to drive the desired actions, and a way to measure and track the progress of key metrics that matter. What is the current state of strategy today? Well, many managers and business leaders are in those positions of leadership because they believe that they can grow the company they work for. One of the most important indicators of growth is some form of monetary metric, right? Profits, revenues, that kind of thing. So they base most, if not all of their approach on setting a financial target and then developing a strategy that leads them to the achievement of that number by working their way backwards. That's also known as spreadsheet strategy. You set a number at the end of the year and that's your target, and then you could divide that number by 12 and that's your monthly target, or do any other kind of math to figure out what your monthly target would be. But essentially, that is spreadsheet strategy. But this approach has 4 flaws according to HBR. Flaw number 1 is that it fails to properly value intangible assets. So in 1975, tangible assets such as land, buildings, machinery accounted for 83% of the market value of the S&P 500. By 2020, tangible assets accounted for just 10%. That remaining 90% consists of intangible assets such as patents, trade secrets, and brand equity. So a lot of company value comes from intangible assets like trade secrets, brand equity. And for major corporations, only about 24% of that value of those intangible assets is reflected in their balance sheet. So while the percentage split might be different depending on the size of your company, this also applies and is also happening to companies of all sizes. In other words, there is a lot of value that's not being captured and tracked because it's intangible and is not reflected in your balance sheet. Flaw number 2, spreadsheet strategies often don't take into account the complexities of our dynamic and evolving world. For example, let's say a $10 million reduction in R&D spending correlates with improved profits in the previous year. Well, according to Spreadsheet strategy, it would be easy to suggest that a $20 million cut would likely double the financial benefits in the following year. Well, in the real world, there are such a thing as diminishing returns, and those things need to be adequately considered before making these assumptions. Furthermore, that $10 or $20 million cut in R&D or in innovation might make you lose market position in 5 years' time because you weren't able to keep up with the market, and therefore you're losing out to your competitors. Flaw number 3. With spreadsheet strategy, it assumes that you can swap out best practices or solutions from either other companies or other sources of inspiration. So if a leader who's been given a target, they might look to see what others are doing and see how they can implement that within their department or within their solution. And quite honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually good to see what others are doing, see what's working as a source and form of inspiration. But it's important to consider the whole context if you're going to look to implement that strategy that is being used and adopted by another company. So this includes the talent, the incentives, the culture, positioning, and more. In fact, in the example mentioned in the article, in the HBR article, the company had 2 years of great financial performance, yet burnout was increasing and innovation was struggling. So if another company wanted to copy their playbook, they wouldn't be able to see or the inner workings of what was happening in the company. They wouldn't be able to see that this company was sacrificing long-term potential for short-term gain. So it's important to get an understanding of the full context. And flaw number 4, spreadsheet style strategies, when given to different department heads and leaders, it incentivizes those leads to focus on their own department, especially if that target is daunting. Given the pressure to deliver on their own department, viewing collective strategy conversations with other leaders and departments just gets deprioritized. And so, as a result, communication diminishes and breaks down. Conflicts increase, opportunities for collaboration goes away, and then senior leadership is forced to do more conflict resolution as opposed to driving the growth of the business. All right, so I told you all the flaws of the spreadsheet style strategy approach. What's the alternative? What should you be doing? Well, you should be establishing strategic fit. According to HBR, strategic fit is the degree of alignment and amount of synergy in a company's overall business as it operates as a system. So you can think of it as a puzzle. Imagine a puzzle where all the pieces are always changing. And usually in a company, you'll have either one person or a group of people whose responsibility is to ensure strategic fit. That person could be the CEO, COO, chief of staff, doesn't matter. But you have someone whose role is to make sure things work cohesively all together. Of course, that's easier said than done. But that's what also makes strategy execution so difficult, yet such an intriguing part of business. Because it's not something that you do in an orderly fashion, step by step, that you follow nicely. No. When one piece or a component of a business changes, whether from your own internal actions or that of external market factors, it changes things for at least one other piece of the puzzle or a component of the business, and then another and another until the whole puzzle is blurry if things aren't adapted and if you don't course correct. On the flip side, when there is strategic fit, it can create multiplier effects within a business. One component, for example, is employees, your talent. When employees are aligned with the other components of the business, such as the purpose of the business, engagement increases. Engaged employees develop more innovative products and services, and that creates enthusiastic and loyal customers. Enthusiastic and loyal customers attract other enthusiastic customers, and that improves the financial results, and that makes employees' jobs more fulfilling, and so on and so forth. So you can see how once all the pieces are aligned cohesively, it can create multiplier effects. All right, so I told you what the solution is. Now, how do you create and sustain strategic fit? Well, HBR has 7 elements that go into creating strategic fit. The first one is the mental model of your business. The mental model is a framework in your mind and in the minds of all of your employees that helps everyone understand how the business works. Success relies on your ability to understand how your business works, communicate that effectively to stakeholders, and be fluid enough to adapt it to the changing world. In the example from the HBR article, a health and wellness brand, right? For them, their mental model or the way that they think about their business is that they create value by improving people's lives. That's one. Two, they understand people are subject to a complex range of human emotion. That's two. And three, it's the CEO's job to unlock people's full potential. Their CEO believes that the company needs to be extraordinary to deliver extraordinary value long term. And they've identified 4 strategic pillars: people, purpose, profits, and play. And every company can create their own. This is just what works for them. And to them, it's not just a slogan. It's not just some wallpaper on the wall, and it's not going to live in a strategy deck on a digital shelf. All decisions are evaluated with those pillars in mind. And that helps reduce some of the cognitive and emotional strain when a difficult decision needs to be made, because there's an agreed upon model that everyone is already aware of. So no one's blindsided. It also helps attract people that believe in these pillars. The second one is purpose and ambition. In the HBR article, the brand's purpose is to improve the self-esteem of people all over the world. Now, honestly, that's very broad, but it still fits with the CEO's mental model of creating value by improving people's lives. And to bring this to life, leadership frequently talk about feelings, empathy, emotions, but they collect data and stories about how the company has helped people achieve greater personal fulfillment. Not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. They're collecting these proof points to confirm and demonstrate that they are acting on their purpose. But a bold purpose requires an equally bold ambition. And in this example, this company, when they had about 5,500 locations, leadership announced a goal of 10,000 within 5 years. They estimated that the company had an impact on the lives of about 20 million people, and they were aiming to reach 100 million people. So profitable operations were a very strong and important pull, and that they needed to focus on getting the right customers, the right investors, and the right employees into their company's almost solar system, into the company's ecosystem, in order to deliver superior value for all stakeholders. The third element of strategic fit is stakeholder value creation. Stakeholders are groups of people that affect and are affected by the activities of a business. This includes customers, employees, suppliers, communities, investors. Each plays a vital role. Customers generate sales and profits. Employees create products and services. Suppliers provide essential tools and materials. Communities offer the environment and the permission to operate. And the investors, well, they supply the financial resources needed to fund growth. The goal of stakeholder value creation is to continuously increase the value of all stakeholders. Leaders who do this right can convince stakeholders that collaborating for their mutual benefit is also in their personal best interest. Companies that excel at creating stakeholder value attract and retain the most valuable stakeholders, and that gives them a competitive advantage. Conversely, companies that fail to do so risk losing key stakeholders to competitors, leading to inferior resources and competitive disadvantages, right? Pretty obvious. I think so. In today's world, very few companies have a monopoly, and very few people have a set of skills so unique that they can only work in one or a handful of companies. Therefore, if you're not bringing value to your customers, they will go to a competitor. If you're not providing employees with the value that they're looking for as their employer, they will go somewhere else, and so on as you continue down the list of stakeholders. All of these things contribute to weakening your competitive position. It's important, though, to distinguish stakeholder value creation from mere do-goodism, which is just like doing good for the sake of doing good, right? Charitable activities that drain company resources without truly benefiting the stakeholders. Effective stakeholder value creation aligns with the needs and values of the targeted groups that we're working with. It ensures that every action taken by the company enhances mutual benefit and supports strategic goal. So it's not just about doing good for the sake of doing good. It's about seeing all the players on the board and showing how helping one player helps another player and the other player and the other player, and how everyone helping each other maximizes our ability and our chances of becoming a leader in that industry and maintaining our lead in that industry. The next element of strategic fit is macro forces, right? Macro forces are factors outside a company's control that can significantly affect performance. That can be economic conditions like a recession, demographic trends, political, legal stuff, cultural trends, tech, a massive pandemic, things like that. Totally outside of the control of the company or of most people. Macro forces they're unstable and no one can control it. So companies still need to monitor them, and they need to adapt their strategy to capitalize on emerging opportunities rather than struggle against unfavorable terms. So without getting into any conspiracy theories, macro trends are uncontrollable. Therefore, it's just better to accept that these things can happen. The external world can mess things up. If the sooner and easier that you accept that, the easier it is to then create a system and a culture that allows for fluidity when a certain macro event, an external event, impacts your business for better or for worse. The next element of strategic fit is called markets and products. Because complex systems are always changing, companies must constantly consider where they will be doing business. Where are they going to play on the playground? And where will they not? It's equally as important to know where you're going and where you're going to play as it is to know where you're not going to go. So some interesting questions to ask yourself are, what gives you the right to play in this space? What does winning look like to you? And what makes you think that you can win? And then, number sixth element of strategic fit, competitive advantages. We spoke about that earlier. Well, competitive advantages are unique attributes or capabilities that enable a company to outperform competitors. They're crucial to the performance of long-term success of any company. They drive sales, attract talent, boost investor confidence, and so on and so forth. And it just makes it harder for new competitors to compete with you. In the HBR example, being people-focused was one of their competitive advantages. You would think that's pretty obvious for a health and wellness company, right? It's all about people, and that it'd be easy for any competitor to copy. But it's all in the execution. That's where it matters the most. When the founders started that company, traditional gyms had limited hours and they were in inconvenient locations, and it was just difficult for people with busy schedules to work out. So they decided to offer a 24/7 fitness centers that would cater to people who needed flexibility in their workout schedules. They also opened smaller, simpler neighborhood gyms that eliminated courts and machines and things that weren't used by most people. They also implemented high-tech security system and access controls to make sure that everyone felt safe and that they can work out at any point in the day or in the night. Many gyms also had complicated membership contracts and used high-pressure sales tactics that would deter potential customers. Those gyms signed up thousands of members hoping that people wouldn't show up to work out. That's what the model was. So the founders of this new company, when they founded it, they wanted to simplify the membership process, make it affordable for everyone without compromising on quality, and make signing up more of a customer-friendly experience. They introduced straightforward memberships without long-term contracts. They provided flexibility, and they just reduced the pressure on potential members. When they started, most of the other competitors, they assumed that the business model would not work. But once the competitors saw that there was profitable growth, more people started to copy them. But by then, they had already created their competitive advantage, and it was hard to replicate. The people-centric culture inspires everyone to be passionate about what they do. It's that culture that views and treats people as partners and valuable assets rather than expenses. And that just takes time and effort that copycats didn't have either the knowledge on how to do and would not be able to replicate in as quickly enough as this company did when they did it. Turning operational effectiveness, culture, and loyalty into competitive advantages requires an operating model that strengthens a company's capabilities and continuously adapts to changing conditions. So, speaking of operating model, let's get into it. Last but not least of the strategic fit elements is the operating model. And an operating model, also known as an op model, is the organization's structure, its processes, its leadership, its culture, its talent, its tech, and all the things that enable people to contribute value to the organization. It's how everything comes together and how everything runs together. Op models look fancy on PowerPoint decks. I've seen many of them, but it's all about how it actually works in the real world. If the op model on the screen doesn't match with how the company is operating, with the way the company is operating, the disconnect will cause things to break. So, let me wrap this video up. As you can see, right, strategic fit is one thing, but bringing it to life is completely something else. It's a crucial part, though, to building and scaling anything that is meaningful. There are a bunch of companies that are building things, making money, don't have strategic fit, right? But how sturdy is that company? How long will it last? That is up in the air. But if you want to build something meaningful, something lasting, something that will have an impact on the most amount of people for the longest amount of time, generating strategic fit within your organization is one of the best ways to do that, if not the best way to do that. So let me wrap this video up. In conclusion, we began with an illustration of a company achieving short-term financial gains while also experiencing the beginnings of long-term decline. This scenario highlighted the critical question, are we truly winning? And exposed the fallacy of relying solely on spreadsheet strategies that prioritize immediate financial targets over a more holistic and sustainable growth. These strategies, as we explored, suffer from 4 fundamental flaws. 1, neglecting intangible assets. 2, assuming linear growth. 3, ignoring the contextual differences between best practices. And 4, divorcing corporate strategy from operational realities. This short-sighted approach leads to burnout, stagnation of innovation, and ultimately a weakened competitive position. What was that solution? Well, that is cultivating strategic fit. This involves aligning all elements of a company's business system to create synergies. That sounds such a consulting world. Just aligning all the pieces of the business together to create multiplier effects, to exponentially improve how things are going, where the whole is greater than the sum of each individual part. Now, achieving this requires a comprehensive approach, and it encompasses 7 essential elements. 1, a clear mental model, right? A foundational understanding of how the business operates and how it adapts to change. 2, purpose and ambitions, right? A defined reason for existence, combined with ambitious goals that drive meaningful action. 3, stakeholder value creation, recognizing and maximizing value for all stakeholders, not just one group. 4, awareness of macro forces and external factors, understanding and adapting to external factors that impact the business. 5, strategic market and product choices, defining where to compete and what to offer based on your unique strengths. 6, sustainable competitive advantages. That's cultivating unique capabilities that differentiate the company and drive long-term success. And 7, an effective op model or operating model, designing the organization's structure, processes, and culture to unleash the potential of its people.